First of all, I'd like to thank Anne-Marie, Ovarian Cancer Australia and Cancer Council Queensland for holding this event. As Anne-Marie said, often things to do with ovarian cancer are very Victoria or New South Wales kind of focused, so it's really exciting to see that changing and to see some events happening in Queensland. So I'd like to start off by sort of sharing my story and then also talking about different ways that you can get involved as ovarian cancer survivors. So, my life before ovarian cancer. Gosh, it feels like a lifetime ago. I was 21 years old. I was on my dream of a working holiday in London. I was working full-time in human resources at a really big company and going to the gym 3 to 4 times a week and traveling as much as I could across Europe. Life was full on, it was busy, but I was enjoying it. I didn't realize how serious my symptoms were at the time. I was having abdominal pain and bloating and fatigue. But these are just things that you often have every day as women. You don't think it's going to be anything serious, let alone cancer. So I just went along with my life. I thought maybe I'd eaten too much, maybe I'd, overindulged. But it got to a point one morning where I woke up and was actually vomiting from the pain in my abdomen. I finally called my boss and said, look, I won't be in work today. And I went down to my local GP. She was quite concerned at first and immediately thought that I was pregnant. I assured her that this wasn't the case. She tested me twice to be sure. It was still negative, so she sent me straight to the ER to have my appendix out, as she thought, yep, it's appendicitis. Although this sounds silly in hindsight, I'm actually really lucky that she did take it that seriously and sent me through to the hospital, even though it had nothing to do with my appendix. At the hospital, they agreed. A young, healthy 21-year-old with no crazy medical history must be appendicitis. They operated on me that evening. They opened me up and they couldn't even see my appendix. There was just tumours everywhere. At this point, they took a biopsy and did my CA-125, words that I'd never heard before. I woke up in the morning, keen to recover. It wasn't until the doctors came around and started just acting very suspiciously that I knew something more serious was going on. They were being very elusive and not really telling me what was actually going on. They were kind of saying, oh, you might have cysts, or we're going to send you for further tests. And I just felt so uncomfortable and knew something wasn't right. I then went for an MRI and the biopsy results came back. I had a phone call from a nurse and she told me to come in urgently. She hung up and then called me straight back and said, oh, I'm sorry, can you bring a loved one in with you? I knew that it was going to be bad, so the next day I took my sister with me and we went into the hospital. I met with a gynecologist and he told me the bad news. It was advanced ovarian cancer. I was then sent for my final referral over to my gynae oncology team, who literally drew a human anatomy and showed me where the cancer had spread. It was the worst picture I'd ever seen. The cancer was everywhere. It had spread all over my ovaries, obviously, throughout my womb, up next to my liver, all over my bowels. It was just a big mess. They told me that without treatment, I would only have a couple of months left to live. They told me with treatment, I might have a few more months to live. But overall, my prognosis was really terrible. I'd be lucky to reach 22. I then had a lot of scary decisions to make. I was overseas. My parents were halfway across the world back here in Brisbane, and I had to weigh up all these options without having really ever heard of ovarian cancer before. I decided that not having treatment just wasn't an option. I had to fight tooth and nail with everything I had to live for as long as possible. So I told my oncology team to throw everything at me. They told me because I was so young that, yes, okay, if you're up for it, we're up for it. They did a surgery that if I had been older, they wouldn't have attempted. It was an 11-hour debulking surgery, which included a full hysterectomy, skyrocketing me straight into menopause, which was absolutely brutal. The hot sweats and the mood swings, and there's a few funny stories there, but I'll skip them for now. And just the brutality of this surgery was huge. It was just like I'd been gutted, literally. I woke up from my surgery with a completely altered anatomy, no large bowel, a new ileostomy stoma, none of my lady bits, a full hysterectomy, and all of my tumours debulked. It was exhausting, but I woke up and my doctor said the sweetest words to me possible: "We got it all." With that, I then continued with all of my chemotherapy treatments and was lucky enough to be NED, no evidence of disease, for quite a few months. I continued on with chemotherapy and also Avastin treatment. It wasn't until about a year and a half later that I recurred, as many women do. With this recurrence, it truly was incurable. It had now spread to around my lungs as a pleural effusion, and it was back on my bowels again, what's remaining of them, and all throughout my abdomen in tiny little bits. At this point, after traveling some more, I moved back to Brisbane because I couldn't put my family through another lot of cancer treatment overseas. I moved home and started treatment at the Royal Brisbane. I've been lucky enough to be in a few clinical trials which have extended my life, and this November I'll be celebrating my 5-year cancerversary since being diagnosed. Many people probably think it's an odd thing to celebrate my cancerversary, but to me, I'm on borrowed time. I was supposed to die with that diagnosis, and new drugs have given me extra time, and I am just so incredibly grateful for that extra time, because in that time I've managed to travel the world, get more dogs, which are my fur babies, fall in love, spend great time with my family, have treasured memories with my friends, and you cannot put a price on those memories. I'm still fighting this awful disease. It's recurred many times. I've been on many regimes of chemotherapy, had many more surgeries, targeted therapy drugs, and hormone blockers. To this day, I'm still fighting. Yesterday, I had my CT scan, and I'm nervously waiting the results. So if I break down crying at any moment, that's why, because I'm strong, I fight this disease, but I'm scared. I am terrified. I don't know what the next day is going to hold. I don't know what the next 3 months is going to hold. All I know is that I live 3 months by 3 months, scan by scan. And that's all we can do as ovarian cancer patients, because this disease is so relentless. And I know I'm talking to the choir. You all understand what it's like to go through an ovarian cancer diagnosis. And I'm sure what I've said has resonated with a lot of you about how it is hard, and you go through so many tough times just to get those good times in life. And it's not fair, but we're in this situation. So I also wanted to talk about what we can do to give back and to kind of take charge of our diagnosis. So since being diagnosed, I've had a lot to do with advocacy. And this is something I never thought I would fall into, and I literally did fall into it. My boss at the time, when I was working in London and had been diagnosed, everyone was shocked and everyone wanted to do something. So my boss said, "Hey, Kristen, do you know our company does a Charity of the Year program?" And I was like, "No, what's that?" And he said, "Our company donates a certain amount of money to a charity each year, and all of the money raised through different events go towards a charity. Can I nominate an ovarian cancer charity on your behalf?" I was like, "Oh, well, that's a great idea. Sure, thank you." And I sent out an email to all of my contacts in the business and said, "Can you please vote for this ovarian cancer charity to be our Charity of the Year?" And I sent a photo of me bald in hospital and said, "This is why I haven't been at work. This is what I'm going through." We got an overwhelming response. We won the competition, and a UK charity, Ovarian Cancer Action, was the beneficiary of what ended up being approximately £40,000 by the end of the year. And that kind of dropped me right into the middle of kind of realizing how important fundraising is, how important sharing your story is. And it was through that I had my first public speaking engagement. I had never really done public speaking before, except for school and uni assignments. I didn't enjoy it whatsoever, but I was asked to volunteer in an event. I literally thought I'd be selling raffle tickets, and they said, "Oh no, you're speaking." So I got up on stage and I started speaking, just from the heart and sharing my story and what I'd been through. So that photo on the left is me with my headscarf on, still bald, still very underweight from my surgery, just getting up and sharing my story. I had a standing ovation from that, and it was the most powerful and empowering moment of everything I had been through. It felt like everything I'd done had been for a purpose. I could share my story, I could raise money towards it, and lead to better outcomes for other women. So I encourage women to share their stories with charities like Ovarian Cancer Australia, and share your stories with the media, share them at fundraisers, share them to anyone who will listen, because you've done the hard thing, you've done the cancer, nothing's worse than that. Getting up and sharing your story is not as hard. And so there is a new program coming to Brisbane and Australia in general called Survivors Teaching Students. Now I'll be the regional coordinator here in Brisbane, and it's a US program where there's over 800 ovarian cancer survivors who have volunteered for this in America. And what they do is they go into universities and they speak to medical students and nursing students and just share their story. They tell them how they were diagnosed, how they were treated in hospital, what could have been done better. They just put a human side to it. And so we've recently launched this, ANZCOG and Ovarian Cancer Australia in partnership. It started off in Sydney last year, and that's a photo of me speaking at the University of Sydney, and it's had hugely great reviews so far, and we'll soon be launching it here in Brisbane. And so we're actively looking for volunteers who are willing to share their story and participate in this amazing program. So I do have some brochures out on the table, and you can sign up and we'll train you and tell you how to structure your story, and it's just a really rewarding experience that you can do, and you can take back the power. You can say, hey, this happened to me, but I'm giving back so that it won't happen as badly to women in the future. And the other advocacy work that I've been doing is I'm in the process of making a podcast. I recently entered a competition through the radio station Nova about submitting a podcast idea, and I've submitted my idea called Overshare, which is where I interview other ovarian cancer survivors. And I was lucky enough to win the competition, and now we're producing a season. So it's up on iTunes and you can subscribe now, and I'm really excited for it because I recently traveled to America and interviewed some amazing ovarian cancer survivors who have just done amazing things. For example, one is a plus size model who models with her scar out. The big scar that we all have down the middle. She models with it out in lingerie. Another one, she's dating a NASCAR race champion, and they've just opened a new hospital wing at her hospital for complementary therapies. Another one has literally fought the American health system and fought for her life to get treatment when her insurance didn't cover it. So we've got some amazing stories that I just can't wait to share. And so yeah, please listen to that and share your stories, speak up, because we need to create a teal army together and improve outcomes for us all. So thank you for listening.